Are we starting?
We are. So welcome, everyone. This is Trey Jadlow, and this is the 30th day of January 2016. And I've got my new friend here, TheRumpus, whom I've never met, and we just now clicked on. I like to keep these spontaneous, so I really haven't done any preliminary exchange with him. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to interact with you, TheRumpus. Is that what you'd like to call you, TheRumpus? Or do you have something?
That's fine.
Okay, all right, great. Well, before we begin, I was wondering if you could tell me maybe a little bit about yourself. You live in the UK, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and you're, I mean, I don't know, I don't mean to probe, but I mean, are you interested in telling us what you do for a living or anything like that?
Well, my background is in a project manager of a software company, designing various bits of software, mostly graphics, and my educational background is in physics and computing. And but I've managed to sort of G up a bit on philosophy over the last the last year or so, and I'm reasonably logical, reasonably mathematical, reasonably interested in the physical sciences. I take an interest in evolution, and I've over the last year or so, I've been interested in evolution for a long time. So I've read a lot of the Dawkins books, and I've taken interest in biology for many years, but it's all amateur stuff, and just the stuff I've seen on YouTube I found very educational. And so people like you know, talking to Fiona and Sam, or I suppose, but watching Sam's stuff in action, and chemistry is another thing I'm reasonably familiar with. So yeah, so the philosophy and the biology side has certainly improved over the last few years. Oh, one thing I want to ask is how long do we intend this to take? Because I'm planning to do, I'm trying to sort of format this to thinking, letting you make the case for the things you want to make the case for. Then I was going to, did you read my little, you did read my little introduction to this?
I did, and here's the deal. I haven't been on Google Plus today at all yet. I had a very busy day. I'm not getting what I need to get done. And then about a half hour ago, I logged in. I was like, oh, good grief. This guy's got a whole seminar planned.
Well, I like, we scientist inclined people tend to be try and be organized and like to organize our thoughts in a logical way. And so they say we do the same with being project manager, of course, always means that I try and allocate tasks and projects and things. So I'd be quite interested to know how long you think this could take. Because I say the idea I was thinking of this is that you would sort of present your case, because I'm getting other people to look at this who haven't done much YouTubing. So I would like you to explain points that you may have explained before. I appreciate that. So, JD and Sam, the last one. So when you talk about things like self-existence, if you could explain what that means.
Sure.
And then I'm proposing, after I've demolished all of your points and your foundational beliefs, and assuming you haven't reached some sort of gibbering wreck and you're still capable of communicating with me, I was then proposing to provide you with a number of videos and things on how the world really works, and a reasonably dramatic video about an uncaused event and how they exist in the real world. So that's going to take that bit of mine. I want about sort of 10 minutes or so, possibly a bit longer, because I'm happy in that time for you to question me and to try and rebut me in any way you feel fit. But so I want to get some idea of the timescale when I need to sort of start thinking about, well, I need to after I finish pummeling you for half an hour, whether I move into the finishing off coup de grace phase towards the end. So I need to know. So I want you to give me a time scale, and also, of course, I want your acceptance that you are willing to have your foundational beliefs demolished, that you're up for some short-term pain, which hopefully will provide you with some long-term gain. Because I am going to be your dentist. I'm going to be delivering some short-term pain, and ultimately you will benefit from it, but it might hurt in the short term. So, so the question I'm asking is how long, because I've seen other hangouts where you've suddenly had to go, and people like Hogtie have just been starting to get going, and then they've had to go. I'm not suggesting you're doing this maliciously or anything.
No. I have an open invitation for Hogtie, and he's not responding. But same with Ozzy. Same with Matthew Steele. There are several people that.
Yes, I think I can understand the trouble. I mean, one of the things I might touch on, as I mentioned in if you've read the sort of post I put onto the Hangout sort of more notice, that your lack of sort of charitable engagement with the people you talk to, I'm
so mean.
Well, yes, I'm not. I'm trying to work out whether it's because you're a bit dim, or whether you're doing
Yes.
intelligent and you're just doing it because it's the way of protecting your bunko RC Sproul mentality, or some other reason. And so that's the see, for instance, when you engage with people like Ozzy or Sam or even JD Kane, who can be, you know, he's quite a lively chap, and the friendly and the cuddly hog tie, you know, they're trying to be charitable, they're trying to explain things to you, they're trying to accommodate what they believe you're thinking, what your understanding is, and they try and give you all options. I mean, someone like Fox the No, he'll mention, for instance, that he thinks you're a young Earth creationist, and he'll try and make accommodation for that in his expression, whereas you just sit back, smile, guffaw, and then just simply say, I'm afraid that breaks the law of contradiction. That's it. And then you never offer any argument. You never offer layers. You don't lead people along the debate, which is what everybody else who you want to engage with tries to do, because they're interested in education. They're interested in the worth of the YouTube. They're interested in even possibly in improving you, which I'm going to do by saying, but it might be painful for you. But you don't do that. You seem to be using debating ploys, and you seem to try, and that's why. I'll go into some detail later, and that's why you might find people like Ozzy, particularly, and the cuddly Canadians won't possibly be so keen on talking to you. So anyway, so I still haven't had the answer to how long you think this is going to take.
Well, I mean, I'd only allotted an hour, but I mean, we could probably go a couple of hours if you'd like.
Okay, well that's okay. So if you think you're getting an urge, you know, with your gibbering wreck or whatever, or you feel or someone, the dog's bitten you or something, if you could give me that sort of at least quarter of an hour warning, if you suddenly get an urge to do something or something's going to happen to you, if you could just give me a quarter of an hour warning, say I'm about to go in a quarter of an hour, if you can give me that sort of warning, and then I can move on to the phase of the explanation that I'm proposing to do, to enlighten you as to how the real world works and reality, and how science has got a good grip on this, and the fact that it'll expose, I'm afraid, your ignorance of where the world works, and your RC Sproul bunker mentality, I'm afraid, will be penetrated. So, okay, that's great. So the 2 hours, but we can obviously change that, but it just means I got an idea. Right, so, okay, and hopefully you won't, so that means you're not going to run away then, and before that, so I hope that's good. And then, of course, the last 5 minutes I was proposing we'd just have you sobbing at that point, and we'll try and do any sort of counselling you may require, possibly calling someone.
Have you ever thought about going into stand-up comedy?
I've got too much to do, but yeah, I suppose I've thought I could possibly. I don't know. I think I've got some competition. I think JD is a bit of a razor wit there. So
Oh gosh, not JD. Oh.
No, JD's a clever lad, and he's very witty with it. And Hogtie, of course, when he's not being cuddly. Right. So okay. So no sobbing at the end. And if you do, okay. So we're allowing. So I've got all the things, and okay. So I've demonstrated that I'd like you to start off by you expounding on your delusion, and I'll then hopefully demolish those bits, and hopefully just quick question to begin with. Do you agree with R.C. Sproul that he said, I think in which book, have you read any of his books, by the way?
I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay, have you read the one about, I can't remember if it's the chance one or the consequence one, in which he states that if there is an uncaused event can be shown to be true, there can be no God. Are you of a similar feeling? Are you one of his, as you're an infantryman for him, do you believe the same thing?
No, I don't think you can, it's even possible to show an uncaused event, because
that's going to be okay. Well, you've got something. You really have got something to look forward to at the end of this video. But let's assume for a moment you don't believe it. So obviously you don't believe it's even possible, and R.C. Sproul doesn't believe it's possible. But he said if it were proven to him, he would stop believing God. Are you of the same intention?
No, because you can't do it, because you have to deny the
law.
No,
that's not what I asked. No, hold on. I asked you if it could be proven to your satisfaction, of course. I mean, not to mine, but if it was proven to your satisfaction, would you stop believing in God?
That's what you have to do. That's your job to do it. But I'm telling you, you don't even understand your own argument. You don't even understand what you're saying right now. And you got this boasting, smart aleck attitude, and you've already dug your own pit, my friend.
Well, okay. Well, I've already got. Well, we'll have a look. But I'm asking you again: If it was proven to your own satisfaction, in other words, if
you can't prove it. You know, that's what you don't understand. You don't understand your own argument. How can you prove that which is nonsense? You're appealing to logical coherence in order to say that coherence or logic is not coherent. It's ridiculous. You're making a circle statement. It makes no mistake.
Okay, I'm afraid this is an example of just asserting something. You'd have to demonstrate it. But
okay, I'm happy to do that. I'm very happy. We can
obviously perhaps we'll go into that. But I want to say, if you have a thought, if the thought into your head occurs such that you become proved by some of the evidence I'm going to provide that there is such thing as an uncaused event,
yes, that's your burden right there. If you can do that, yes, I'm telling you, you can't.
God. Okay, all right. Okay, no, that's the challenge. Okay, so you would, if that thought entered your head, if that became a truth for you, which you believe is a logical incoherence. Okay, that's your position. You're allowed to have that position. Maybe delusional drivel, but you're allowed to have that position because we allow idiots on YouTube. If you have that thought, then you will follow R.C. Sproul and stop believing in God.
R.C. Sproul will stop believing in God.
R.C. Sproul. So you would stop believing in God if you had that. If that became a truth for you. Your satisfaction.
That's what you have to do, but you can't. In other words, in order to define an effect or an event, you have to invoke cause by definition. It's an analytic truth. This is the whole thing I went through with Ozzy.
No. This is a ridiculous assertion. We know cause and effect are linked. I mean, Ozzy explained this to you, and other people did. Max, that cause and effect are linked words in English. And they are, and in reality, they apply to things we see in the real world where things cause other things to be.
It's not the external that gives definition to the analytic. It's the analytic that gives definition to the external. That's your problem. You got it backwards.
Well, hold on. The words cause and effect are linked, and they are linguistic.
By definition, right?
Right. But if we have another thing that happens in the world which does not have a cause, then we call it an event. So we have
that's just a word game, because does an event happen?
It's not a word game because there's a semantic difference. There's a difference semantically between something that is an event that does not have a cause,
please
explain. And there's a difference between something that is an effect that does have a cause. So that's not a word game. That's not something clever or devious. Very, very clear. I don't see the problem here. I mean,
tell me what the difference between an effect and an event is.
One has a cause and the other one doesn't.
It's just what you say by definition. All right, this is what you. This is so
obviously I have to prove. But obviously I have to prove that the event, the thing that happens in the real world, doesn't have a cause.
Okay, now you're appealing to empirical evidence, but you're not, and you're denying the logic to interpret it. I mean, this is so pathetic. This is what Ozzy would be arguing. I'm glad to talk about this because this can show up the silliness of the last exchange we just had.
You do realize that the words event and the words effect can have different definitions. You accept this, don't you?
They can have different nuances, but they both. All I need is that they both happen. Do they both happen? Will you concede that?
No, I'm afraid this is where if you use the word happen, I'm afraid I'm going to have to shoot you and come over there with a real drill, because as I said in my preamble that I have not lost an argument to people I haven't killed. So I don't think you want to be a person I've killed, because if you use the word happen, I'm afraid, or happening or becoming, I'm afraid those ancient, archaic Aristotelian terms, I'm afraid
that's just not an Aristotelian. There's a Jadlow term. It's just something that makes sense to me.
Let's use very well defined terms rather than using everyday terms and equivocating on them. Let's try and use very specific, well defined terms.
What word would you like instead of happen? That's fine.
Right.
You can use
come into existence. If that's what you mean by happen.
So, okay, that's fine. So there's change. You're saying change, right?
What's change? Sorry.
An effect and event are both necessarily linked to the term change. That's what I mean by happen.
Okay, yes. I mean, a cause, the effect is clearly in the thing that's affected. Let's talk about a thing. If there's a thing that's affected, and it's obviously in one state beforehand and another state time. So it has changed, yes, in whether it's just its movement, its appearance, or its composition. It's changed. So yes, so the thing that is affected, if we talk about a thing that's affected, then clearly that has changed. And if it comes into yes, so when I said yes, I used on the coming to existence, because you tend to use the word happened. See, here you are. See, this is exactly why you don't use the word happen, because I understood the word when you said does something happen to come into existence, but it turns out what you meant was something else. And this is the equivocation. Unfortunately, the language you use is so unspecific. And as J.D. Kane pointed out to you, no one actually understands what you're trying to say for half the time. Now, I'm not quite sure whether this is intentional, but you don't specify terms because you use everyday language in equivocal words, and no one's actually quite sure what it means. So if we talk about things come into existence, let's please use that phrase. And if you're talking about change, we all understand what change means, and something changes. And you have a tendency to use clipped phrases like, well, you're contingent. I don't really like just use the word something is contingent. I prefer to have something is contingent upon something else. But anyway, but you see, so we've just had an example here of you use the word happen, and that's what I want to eliminate from this. I want you to be clear in what you mean, and if you use specific words or specific phrases, then I can understand, and then we're all together, we all start off at the same point of understanding instead of, because the one thing that's going to cause aggravation is if you think you're saying something, I misunderstand it, and I say something, well, particularly because I believe I use specific terms that are readily understandable, or scientific terms that have very firm meanings. You don't do the same, so the confusion is going to come from you using the words happen. So if you could refrain from using the words happen, becoming,
change.
and
Just
change is fine. I understand change. I understand change.
Here's the glory about Hangouts, and this is why I prefer Hangouts over text exchange. You can stop me at any moment and say, I don't understand it. Can you explain it to me? Which I've done in every Hangout I've ever done. I've not played games. People don't understand what I'm saying. They can ask me about it. It's not that difficult. And so if you don't like happen, that's fine. We'll talk about change. That's all I need.
Really?
That's all I want, is it?
Well, that's very accommodating of you. I mean, J.D. Kane pointed this out to you, and I think other people have.
J.D. doesn't even understand the arguments. It's amazing how much interaction we've had, and he still doesn't get it. And it's so simple.
I think he does. I think J.D.'s not stupid.
No, he doesn't. You're just telling me he doesn't right now. You're saying, oh, he says it. You're so mystical, Trey, or whatever I'm saying is so difficult. It's not difficult. It's very, very simple.
What is simple?
The whole argument, everything that I'm talking about is a child can
gibberish arguments can be simple. There's no doubt about that. Right, so we've so great. I mean, that's wonderful of you to say that you're going to be elucidating, because I think people have been a bit reluctant because you deploy. I mean, I don't know if you've seen true empiricism action. His favorite trick is he's found a few words, he's read up on a little bit of area, he's quite stupid, but what he will do is then deploy these enzyme names and things, and phosphorylation cascades that he knows his interlocutors are not going to understand, because he picks on people usually who are not going to understand something, and he then does that to destabilize their understanding, and so they're then reluctant to come back. And I think you, unfortunately, are a bit of a true empiricism in the philosophical arena, and you deploy words because you live in your head, you live in the world of R.C. Sproul, and you deploy self-existence. And the classic one was the analogous thing. The thing you said to Alex Bottom, which was just at some. I mean, you've improved over the year, but the one of the most outrageous one was the analogous something or other. Oh, from R.C. Sproul, that was just so appalling, and poor Alex, he was too busy working out what the hell you said, and you said it very quickly because it's obviously one of your sort of cliches.
Analogical language you talking about?
Analogical language for. What was it? Anyway, it's the most appalling phrase I think I've ever heard on YouTube, possibly, and it's a criminal offence to have used it. So great. I'm very pleased. That's very accommodating of you to say that you will accommodate me and change your language to be clearer and more specific, and also perhaps change your style, which is one of the things leading me through. So when you say something, for instance, I'm no doubt you're going to say this, that is a violation of the law of non-contradiction. I'm going to ask you when you say that, show that to me.
Excellent.
It's not good enough to say it. You're going to have to show it to me, lead me along as though I'm completely ignorant. Like I say, there are other people who are going to be watching this, because I've got a number of other external people who don't usually watch YouTube, and they're going to know what on earth. They're not even going to know what the law of non-contradiction is. So if you produce a term like that, just quick if you can, just slip in all, because if you won't, I will. And it's going to be silly if you were saying something and I chip in, but just make that allowances. So, right, where were we? So brilliant. You're not going to use happen, and we've already established there was a confusion over that word, and you're going to resolve that by using clearer, more specific words. That's fantastic. That should be much. See, now here you're engaging. Actually, you're giving me good burden of hope. You're much more engaging here, and you're accommodating. You're thinking. You're prepared to lead me on. So this is actually a much more productive and portray than I think I've ever seen. And poor old Fox, who's so generous to you and tries to lead you along, and you just awkward with him. So anyway, so this is fantastic. So if we can keep up this spirit, then the pain might be a little bit less for you when it all happens. Right. Okay. So yes, I've already said we're not going to kill you, and unless you. Yes, and you've already established. Okay, and you're RC Bunker. Okay, we've already established the language. And we've already established that I'm not your cuddly hog tie or Aussie. And I mean, for instance, just recently to demonstrate this, you had a little chat, I think, on one of my threads in which Diner Cats Love Me, he just asked a simple question about asking you to clarify your position, and your response was not to clarify your position, but just to say, oh, you don't understand, or you're stupid. In effect, he didn't quite say that. I'm paraphrasing. It might be a little bit unfair, but along those lines, Diner Cat Loves Me, he was trying to engage with you. He was trying to understand what you were saying. You didn't expand. You just simply rebuffed him and left it at that. And that's the sort of behaviour that means that's why people like Ozzy, Cuddly Hogtie, and others don't engage with you, and you're your own worst enemy in that regard. Right. Okay. So if you want to start then on your sort of view of the world, and then I will demolish it basically, and then we can go through the various. I think the various things where your self-existence stuff, cause and effect, which we've touched on already. But yes, we can go back to that because you said you were going to develop that, and you're going to show me something about the fact that you're not allowed to have a word called event, apparently, with a meaning, that the semantic of that. And then I was even going to possibly move on to things like free will and whether that's deterministic. And then obviously we've got the first cause of the universe and your Aquinas stuff. And so yeah, so that's and then I'll probably get onto my bits after that. But yeah, so if you want to develop your outlook, so that people who haven't seen you for the first time, what your outlook on the world is, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to tell them you're a young Earth creationist and you think the world is only 6,000 years old, so they're already going to believe you're a complete idiot. But hopefully by the end of this, you know, between the gibbering at the end, I'm hoping that I'll be giving you an insight into how the real world works, and you might not making such silly statements. Anyway, let's hear from you how you think the world works, where God fits into this, where we fit into this, where the universe fits into this, and then I will demolish it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start with the same old foundational argument. Will you grant me the two foundations of rational coherence of the law of non-contradiction and the basic reliability of sense perception in order to do inquiry? Because if you don't have those, you don't have any inquiry.
Yes, I mean, if you can't perceive the world, we could toss to my solipsism. What's the point? I think we realize, I think it's improbable. Yeah, so I'm perfectly happy to say that our perceptions are accurate and that the law of non-contradiction is valid. So yeah, brilliant. That was what a great start. So there we are. We've got a nice joint start here, so we can now proceed on a logical pathway, and I can guide you where you're going wrong.
Okay, great. So if I have those two foundations, then I can say that epistemological foundations. I can say that I know that I, as an inquirer who is thinking about these things, I have the perception enough to know that I, as the inquirer, exist. That I realize that I am not self-existence, because by definition, self-existence is that.
Hold on. Sorry, am I allowed to? Do you mind if I interrupt you?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Right, you could be self-existent but not have memory of being self-existent. I actually asked Ozzy about this when I was talking about solipsism, and I said to him, could you be a solipsist but not and be self-existent? But of course, for some reason or another, which we don't understand because we don't know how the world works necessarily, you could have lost the memory of that. So you could be self-existent but not know it. But I mean, it's obviously unlikely, but so I'm just pointing out that
that's
I think
not possible. No, let me explain why.
Okay, great.
Okay, so if you forgot that you are self-existent, then you're not self-existent because you're contingent upon that which made you to forget. In other words, you're fallible. Fallibility is not consistent with
self-existence. Quite a lot. You said quite a lot in that last 30 seconds. Could you start from the start about that?
Sure. All right. So that which is self-existent is not dependent.
Let's define what self-existent means, of course, to the people who have never heard of this before. What does self-existent actually mean?
That non-dependent.
So it came into existence. There's nothing that caused it to come into existence.
Well, no, it cannot happen either. In other words,
you've used the word happen. You see there, yeah.
I'm sorry, it cannot change. It cannot.
No, I see there. So there's a piece of first order drivel. There's nothing about something that is self-existent that means it can't change. I mean, for instance, I could cite, if you want to think of God as a self-existent being, which I think you do you not? The Christian God?
Yes,
okay. Yeah, well, he's thinking, he's interacting with people. I mean, in Jesus, if you regard Jesus as part of God, he came down here, he changed, he got nailed to things. He had nail stuff through him. He had thoughts, he had conversations, and God is listed in the Bible as getting very angry with people and responding. And in theory, I don't know whether you pray or not, but he's having loads of chats at the moment with all sorts of people and responding and telling them what's what. So he's having thoughts, and to have thoughts, that means he's got to have memories, he's got to remember how he talked to someone and what he's going to do. So he's changing all the time. So for a start, your suggestion that God is this self-existent being, if he can't change, you've either got to change your idea what God is, or you can't be self-existent. or you've got to allow self-existent things to change. They are not immutable, and there's nothing you can logically suggest in any sort of argument, analytically, logically, or any other argument to say, and if you can, I suggest you proceed with an argument that logically necessitates that a self-existent being cannot change.
Okay, all right. When something changes, is it dependent upon that which brings the change?
No, things can change internally.
Okay, then its being within itself is
Yes.
changing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You just said self-existent entity doesn't change, and an internal change is a change.
Okay, and if something is changing, then it is in itself. It's not consistent in what it is. It is
Changing. Yes. It's changing. Yes, it's no longer in some aspect. It doesn't. The self-existent, but I mean, the self-existent is just something that happens how it came into being.
No, it doesn't happen.
What? In fact, no, use the word happen again.
You did.
That's true, but I'm allowed to because I use it in the conventional sense. So I'm sorry, it's an asymmetric rule here. And you could complain about that. You may validly complain about that, but unfortunately, I don't abuse it. You do. Just because and I'm going to demonstrate this in real world, because when I demonstrate things that come into existence without a cause, you regard the definition. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if something came. I don't. Well, possibly you think it always existed. Do you? Is a self-existent always existent, or does it just somehow manufacture itself? Just remind me what your position on self-existence is.
Again, you're not even understanding the concept. It cannot. It cannot. The reason it cannot change is because
it can't change.
If it has a change within itself, then it's still not self-existent. It's changing. It's becoming.
No.
You understand what becoming means?
Hold on. Sorry, no, you just said something. It's completely an irrational linkage there of two terms. You just presumed. I mean, obviously that's where you believe, but I think you're just saying this mantra so often you've forgotten the logic of it. You said because something is self-existent, it cannot change. There is no reason you have offered to suggest why something that is self-existent, as in the sense of it's been around for eternity, or that it can't change, because we've already established, and you've obviously ignored my God points, that if your God is that, he's busy changing.
So it's an emergent property?
An emergent property.
What is a self-existent? I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not self-existent. It's dependent on something, right? You're defining self-existence as contingency, right?
Well, the only self-existent thing I believe, which is, I understand a self-existent thing, is to be simply uncaused. That's what I'm going to go with. Now, what you think self-existent is, you're going to have to outline to me, and then I'll tackle what you're saying. So I'm quite happy for you to define self-existence, and we'll take it from there. But as I say, you can.
Well, yes, I am. I'm saying that which is not dependent upon anything else for its existence. It is self.
So all you're saying. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Sorry, I thought you'd finish your definition there. So,
I did.
Sorry, could you repeat the last half? As I understand, you're just saying it's uncaused. Is that correct?
It is pure actuality.
Well, and that's bollocks. You see, that's another word I was going to ban you from using, but we'll let you. We'll also like you to elucidate on that as well. But before you do that, sorry, could you just give me your definition of self-existence again? Because I did interrupt you, and I'd like everybody to hear your definition and me to understand.
Self-existence is that which exists in and of itself. It's not dependent upon another in order to be. It's not morphologically changing in any way. It cannot.
No. You just added that on. You've just added that on. You see, you can't make that part of the definition. Unless you will, well, perhaps you do want to make that. If you do want to make you've defined it as not being changing, but that's not how. That's adding an extra property to it that you've just decided to add. The self-existent part, I'm prepared to accept the self-existent thing is something that's uncaused, and I can't remember the exact phraseology you used there. It's nothing else caused it to come into being or whatever. But then you added on just now, because you've obviously you've now spotted that I'm going for you heavily on this changing business. You then threw in as a part of the definition that it doesn't change and doesn't morph, and that's something you've now added to the definition of something self-existent. You slipped it in, and I'm not having it.
Okay.
You have to show why something that is uncaused, just exists, but it was not something. It was not contingent upon anything. How that has to be unchanged, because your God, as I've pointed out now several times, your God is changing if he's busy coming down to earth and interacting with people and having nails pumped into him.
Okay. Do you realize that you're doing like 90% of the talking in this hangout?
Yeah, I'm trying. Yes, I should. I'll try and work it down. Yeah, if you find that's I will try and give you more. I'm hoping this will reduce because as I sort of challenge the bits you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfectly valid complaint, and I will try and curtail my. But it's interesting you should raise that though. At the point I'm making a very important point. I regard that as a bit of a deflection, but possibly. Yeah. Anyway, so carry on.
All right. So if something is changing. You don't want me to use happening, but it is emerging, is it not?
I'll allow you to use emerging, yes. Changing,
it's
emerging.
It's an effect.
Well, the thing is, the trouble is emerging is something you usually follow by what it's emerging into. Changing just means something is changing over time, which I understand. But if you say something's emerging, I think it's like coming like a frog coming out of a pond is emerging. So I don't know why you want to use the word the changing was.
I'm trying to use words that you will not find
changing.
offensive.
I'm happy with changing. I'm perfectly happy with changing.
Okay, and so changing, it would be defined as that which has potential, right?
Everything has potential. There's nothing without.
Okay, if everything has potential, then everything is really nothing. I don't know if you're familiar with the debate between Heraclitus and Parmenides in the pre-Socratic period.
Yeah, and see, this is where you're stuck with so this is unfortunately where you've gone back to Aristotelian bollocks. And let's not forget people like Aristotle.
This is way before Aristotle.
Well, it's even worse then, isn't it? Because I mean, people like Aristotle, through their hard thought, when they lived in a world that didn't understand irrational numbers, that didn't know about zero, they thought, for instance, Aristotle thought that seeing things involved light coming out of the eye. And that's how things were seen. And he also had his four causes, two of which are complete and utter bollocks. So unfortunately, you're reveling in this world of bollocks. And so if you start, I can't remember what you referred to. No, I'm not familiar with that piece of drivel, but you reassert. I'll try and tack it.
I'd love you to justify the bollocks of two of the four.
Yeah, well, Aristotle believed that the fourth of his causes was the reason why he believed the lamp was light because it illuminated the paths for people to see. He felt that was its function. In other words, it's the ultimate function of something. Everything had to have a function. He didn't believe that things just happened. Do you
believe in teleology?
I believe in what? So teleology.
Yeah, that's what the final cause is.
Yes. No, I don't. No, not at all. Obviously.
No, you don't. Then why are you doing this hangout?
Because I'm going to administer some painful realignment of your view of reality, and also
for some goal.
It's an intellectual exercise for me as well.
Do you have a goal?
Yeah, the goal is, as I say, as I mentioned in the script at the beginning, my goal is to turn you into a gibbering wreck and have your view of reality fixed.
So you do believe in teleology? Well,
teleology is the argument from design, isn't it?
It's just, is there any design in this universe? Is there any purpose in this universe?
No.
Then why are you here?
Well, because I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying exercising my brain.
Your goal is enjoyment, right?
Yes, that's.
So you believe in teleology now?
No. This didn't come. There's nothing designed about this. My biology did this. You see, if I didn't enjoy life, I wouldn't breed. I wouldn't have children. I wouldn't look after them.
Is that a bad thing?
Well,
I mean, you guys think you're so smart, and it's so pathetic.
Evolution doesn't have it. Evolution just is, and the things that don't evolve die, and the things that are like to breed and how.
And is that a problem? Is the goal existence? Does evolution goal existence? This is why lack of Darwinian evolution is silly.
Goal. It's just it's a non-goal orientated activity that occurs.
Then why are you speaking as if existence is somehow special?
Well, existence isn't special.
Then why are you acting like it does?
Well, I'm a biological entity. I'm driven by evolution. I'm driven by my biochemistry. I'm driven by
evolution is teleological towards survival, right?
But the teleological thing is a conscious thing. But evolution isn't conscious.
Are you conscious?
Yes, I'm conscious. But the process that led to me being conscious isn't conscious. That's completely down to biochemistry and.
So you believe in teleology then, in consciousness?
Do I? No, nothing designed it. It just came about accidentally.
But is it teleological?
Well, if you mean by teleological, define teleological for me, because that would help us out here.
Purpose. That it just has a goal. Telos means goal in Greek.
No, it has no purpose. Evolution. No, it doesn't have a conscious purpose. It just has a purpose that came. No, it doesn't have a purpose at all. There is no purpose in evolution.
Then why are you here?
because I have a brain that, one of the eddies, you can say, of the process of evolution is to produce higher thinking beings like me. And because a being having a thoughts like I have mean that my children are more likely to breed and succeed in the world. That's why
that's the goal. It's the goal.
I've got to make. Sorry, I've got a dominant. Well, that's why we've become the dominant animal, because our brains have given us an evolutionary advantage. That's what we have replaced. Whereas in 2,000 years ago, most of the mass of the vertebrates in the world were sheep and other things. We were minor. Now we are 90% of the vertebrate of the animals bigger than a bunny sort of thing in the world. And the evolution has said that we've provided us with this advantage, and because I have a consciousness, because I have memory, and it's made us more successful. That's why we're here. If bunnies had the same thing, they would be here and they would have all the advantage. It's an evolutionary advantage to want to do things like I'm doing to you. It means I can think, I can predict the world, I can understand reality, which means I can control reality, which means I can then breed more successfully. So
you believe in teleology, but you don't believe in teleology at the same time, the same relationship.
No, because that replies as a design there. Evolution is just an unthinking process, and it's the unthinking results of that process that have provided certain animals with advantages by giving them very clever brains, ourselves and chimps and things. It's an evolutionary advantage to have a conscious thinking being. So
advantage is the goal of evolution, right?
There's no goal. The only goal is to be more popular than something else.
This is pathetic.
But you think the coming together of molecules, which is what, and the fact that these particular combination of molecules existing rather than not existing. Can you see that, for instance, if there was imagine that in the RNA pool or something of the early Earth, there were some molecules that came together and they replicated. Just talking about molecules here, not even cells, and they replicated. The world would then be covered with those molecules that have replicated, and all the ones that wouldn't exist anymore. And that's what's happening here. There was no, you're not thinking, presumably, at that stage of, if you believe, obviously you don't believe in evolution because you're an idiot, but at that stage, you surely can see that just from a mathematical point of view, you will end up with chemicals that replicate, dominating the world over the molecules that don't replicate. You can surely see that even with your twisted view of reality. And that's what's happening here.
TheRumpus, I'm referring to you. I'm referring to your goal of life, that you think it's very, very special that we preserve the world, that we make life as long. I'm sorry?
Evolution has dictated that being...
So evolution is teleological.
No.
I mean, do you see that? Do you not see that you use terminology as if it's teleological, and then you turn around and say, oh, it's not
it has the appearance. To idiots, it looks as though there's a design process, but it's not.
We call names to people who disagree with us, and that somehow is going to carry the day.
But I gave you an example about in the RNA world. Then this in the prebiotic.
I'm talking about you, buddy. I'm referring to you.
Can you not see? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you a scenario in which you can see why it works. That the dominant things, the more successful things that flourish, are going to dominate and succeed. And similarly, evolution has dictated, well, not that's the word. See, it's very difficult to get. It's very easy to get in design, and you're exploiting this. Evolution has found but the creation of creatures like me means I'm more successful. But that's just an unthinking.
Successful? You mean to survive is a success?
From the evolutionary point of view, yes, spreading our genes everywhere.
But evolution isn't teleological. There was no such thing as success.
Well, I mean, you could argue, okay, there are more, just like in the prebiotic phase, when there are more molecules that replicated and there weren't. I'm exactly the case here. If you want to, I've put. There is, we've got restricted dictionary here terms that I can use. I would argue, for instance, that those replicating molecules were more successful. It's a term I'm giving it. I mean, they don't have thoughts. There are more of them. Perhaps I should use a completely unemotive term. There are more of me. How about that? And I breed. So yes, so every time I say something like successful, what I mean, so yes, you're right to question me on this. When I say successful or any of those sorts of terms, I'm talking about as an animal, I live longer and I breed.
And why? Where did that come from? The whole question is, why are you teleological when there's no such thing as teleology? That's my question, my friend.
I'm not teleological. I'm just saying that the levels of consciousness that I have the appearance of where I can understand the world and therefore manipulate it and be more successful has been provided to me by an unthinking process. Because just like those RNA molecule, the RNA and various other prebiotic molecules were able to be dominant in a world, I can be dominant in this world. And so evolution has said we can give these attributes to this being, or it didn't think that, the accident of us acquiring a consciousness that makes us better at breeding and living means that we breed and live, and therefore we are here rather than not here. Animals that aren't good at breeding and aren't good at living die. So the only ones that are left are the ones that are good at breeding. And it just so happens that having a consciousness where we can start using design and things, by giving those properties, that ability to us, we then breed and live. That's all evolution cares about, breeding and living, or in fact living up to the point we breed.
But evolution doesn't care, remember?
Absolutely, it doesn't care. Absolutely.
You don't see it.
It's just chemicals. Why do chemicals care?
Well, why do you care about axe murderers, TheRumpus?
You see, evolution has provided me with a conscience. because
I mean, this is hilarious.
Because it means I can breed and live more successfully. It means that I, for instance, look after my
children.
children.
The goal is to live. I mean, hopefully we keep the rules and someday it'll sink in. I mean, it's just hilarious.
No, I can. As I said, I'm defining evolution and my success, and I'm defining success as living to breed. That's all.
Right.
That's all. Right.
Existence is special, right?
Sorry.
Existence is special, right?
Well, it's more special than not existing. I don't know.
Okay.
Wait, so what's sorry? What's special?
Okay. Now, how do you justify that teleology when there's no such thing as teleology? Well, I'll say teleonomy too. There's people in the comment section going, "Oh, here's me teleonomy." It doesn't matter. Teleology, teleonomy, whatever. Tell us that there is some kind of goal. Any goal disproves Darwinian evolution, which has no efficient cause.
No goal. Where'd you get this goal from? I mean, hold on. Let me just go back to the example, because I'm going to try that model. In that, you do understand when I was describing that prebiotic stage when the replicating molecules were more successful than the non-replicating molecules. You see that as a mathematical. You can see that's what would happen, can you?
Yes.
You can see the things that can replicate and take in energy from their environment and then replicate will then dominate the world. And that's so they all that's happening here, then bring it up to my level, is that there are some extra. So the property of replication meant that those molecules multiplied and dominated. Now, similarly, we've got to a stage where evolution has led to given me the ability to think, and there's no goal here, or the only goal is to breed and to live and breed. So using that rule, so the only rule that's being applied here is to live and breed, and that's resulted in me. The accident of evolution has brought up something like me, a human being, to the point where I live and breed successfully. Now, you were asking me about conscience, and it just so happens that another thing that makes me live and breed more successfully is by having a conscience, because that means that I can cooperate with someone next door in my little caveman. If I go and help, well, for instance, if you were in my next cave and you fell over and broke your leg, I helped you. Next time I fell over and broke my leg, you come and help me.
Existence is special, right? We are programmed with the teleology of existence, right?
Do you think a slug is special?
Well, I do, because it's a creation of God.
What about a bacteria?
As long as a bacteria gives glory to God, yes. Everything that exists in one sense is valuable.
Okay, you think everything's special. Okay, fine, everything's special. Okay. If that's what you regard as special.
Rumpus, all I need is one thing to be special, and Darwinian evolution completely collapses.
Well, what do you mean? Well, you just said everything's special. So I'm if you're equating those two terms, everything and special, well, okay, I'll agree that everything's special. But what's not special?
Well, you can be careful with your terminology, because there are those things which are given existence, which also are destructive. For example, even Adam and Eve.
So hold on, you said bacteria is special. Do you think the bacteria that causes tuberculosis or the virus that causes AIDS, do you think that's special?
That's what I was talking about. There are certain things that are not desirable because of the fall of Adam.
So bacteria. So there are some sorts of bacteria that are special, and there are other sorts of bacteria that are not special. Is that correct?
In a different sense. Everything.
A different sort of special. Okay, we've got two different sorts. Okay, tell me about two different sorts of special.
Well, you've got special from one perspective, and that it's contingent, and the fact that it exists, it has to be valued. Otherwise, it would not be, because contingency.
So the AIDS virus is special and valued.
What do you call it? The cellular level, or the biomechanical structures that make up that
The virus is the most basic form of life. It's barely got it's got a tiny little strand of RNA inside it, covered in a few protein molecules. It's as bad. It's in fact, it's not really regarded as life because it can't actually exist. Well, it exists, but it can't breed unless it goes and finds something to sort of parasitize. But you think that's HIV virus is special?
Well, I think that it's a metastasization as a result of bad things.
What bad things cause the HIV virus?
I'm sorry?
What bad things cause the HIV virus?
Well, the very fact that there's sin in the world, that there's any type of virus.
So there's a direct, you can demonstrate with a logical deductive argument that sin has caused the HIV virus. You can show that by a piece of logic, analytical,
sure.
Logical.
It's the very fact that you say, it's the very fact that you say it's bad. Do you think it's bad? Is AIDS bad to you?
Well, yeah. Well, to me, having a moral, because I'm a moral being, because evolution has armed me with that ability to be moral.
Okay, then you just concede the argument.
Because it helps me live and breed.
That's right. The goal of existence.
Live and breed, because as I showed you with those prebiotic RNA molecules that replicate, they have that property of replicating made them dominate. So by me having a conscience, that's also helped me live and breed. So now where were we? Sorry, I've lost track of where I was. Where you asked what set me off on that now?
Well, you're just saying that evolution is not teleological, and you're saying if there are bad things in the world, then somehow that proves, and I'm saying if you're the one that's saying it's bad, then you're conceding the fact that life is special.
Only bad to me. I mean, in the world, in the universe, there's no good or bad in the universe. The universe doesn't.
All I need is one thing, my friend. One thing is all I need.
Not one thing. The universe doesn't have any opinion on what's good or bad.
Then do you have an opinion on what's good or bad?
Do I? Yes, but I'm not the universe.
Are you a part of the universe?
Yes, so is a hydrogen molecule.
So there is something in the universe that is teleological, right?
No. Well, so explain it to me. Okay, good. Lead me through it. Here we go. Lead me through that, Trey. Explain that to me. Why I'm teleological.
I don't know how you could miss it. We've been talking about it for half an hour now. Goal. Do you have a goal?
I have a goal, but the thing that created me didn't have a goal.
Okay, well, all I need is one thing that has a goal. The goal exists, right?
The property of evolution doesn't mean to say that I have the same properties as evolution. Evolution doesn't have a goal, but it's created something in me that does have a goal. Oh, I don't understand the problem here. There are two processes going on here. The only thing that evolution cares, from my point of view, or evolution doesn't care about anything, but just the reason why evolution happens to me is because I breed and I live. But it's created in the process of breeding and living. So you can think of it as a program: breed, live, breed, live, breed, live. That's all it says.
A program toward a goal, right?
No, it's not a goal. Well, it doesn't. Well, this comes out.
Even replicating DNA is teleological.
Just as I explained to you with those prebiotic chemicals that replicated in the soup and the earth thing.
Is the replication teleological?
No, there's no design in it. It just happened. It just happened that once upon a time.
It's a program, right?
3.5 billion years ago, something happened. Some chemistry happened that caused a particular molecule to be able to replicate. That's all that happens. An accident. So
and it was programmed for existence for replication, right?
Sorry.
It was programmed for replication, which is
no, there's nothing. Right? Oh well, the process of accidentally creating, the accident of creating something.
Accident it doesn't work because an accident, as you guys have pointed out to me, an accident is something that was purposed and didn't work out right. You mean unintentional?
Purpose is another word you're not allowed to use. I'm sorry.
Unintentioned is the word you want. You don't want accident. You want unintentional. You want to say it unintentionally did this. It unintentionally intended purpose. That's what you want to say.
Oh, you think accident is something that someone's doing? So your definition of accident involves
that's an argument from your side. Yeah. I like to use accident, but I've been told I'm not allowed to use that because an accident is something that was purposed and messed up.
Oh, right. Yes, that's actually, I would accept that, actually. I mean, I'm using yes, that's a good argument. I mean, but I think we know what we mean here. Yes, yes, okay, you got me there. I think the people who've been criticizing that is when you want to get picky, but it's not usually germane to the whole thing. But yeah, that's correct. Yes, accident is when you, well, I don't know, we're talking about car accidents and things, and I think there's an equivocation here. I suspect you could look in a dictionary and find there's one term where someone's trying to do something, that would go their way, and sometimes they might be right. Who knows? I haven't got the definition in front of me. I could look it up. I don't think it really matters. We both know, casual, when we're not writing this down in some formal paper. I think we both know what we mean by accident. So the accidental. But yes, they're probably right, and that being not specific. So one molecule bashed into another. and that using some energy would derive from the sun, and then that caused that molecule to have the ability to replicate because it absorbed some energy, and then that molecule. So there's no, it just so happens, the reason I mentioned that rule about breeding surviving, it just so happens that that is the formula, the accidental formula that things fall upon to cause them to dominate, and has caused to bring, and just that simple rule that occurs in chemistry and biology then has ended up with me having a conscience. But just because the process is random, that doesn't mean to say that what it produces has to be random. I can have a conscience, I can have teleological ideas, I can have the goal of rooting out your delusion from your RC, detaching you from RC Sproul surgically, and I can have that. But the process that brought about me doesn't need that at all. All that process that did cause me, as I say before, was just simply so I could live and breed.
Okay, so the goal is to live and breed, right?
No, I don't. My chemistry, my biochemistry dictates. That's why, I mean, for instance, the idea that I have, like running after women or something, I mean, that's not something I've consciously done. That's programmed into me because that's the only way that the genes in my body are going to be able to spread themselves, just like that prebiotic molecules that you firstly replicate.
Oh, so in your view, homosexuality is devious?
It's certainly not favoured by evolution, although it does seem to be that younger children, something like if you have lots and lots of children, there is studies to say that possibly due to some activity in the woman's womb, or possibly perhaps knowing that they've had more children, perhaps like there are certain birds and ants, for instance, all the ants are female, but they help the queen. And there might be some issue like homosexual children are somehow perhaps to help the parents, because they the generations after the last birth of a long line of children perhaps might be more inclined to be homosexual, because that means they will then help the rest of the family rather than go off and try and breed themselves, because there's a large family involved. That's random, that's some thoughts on that. But there's, so, I wouldn't, so they could be entirely advantageous to the family to have some homosexual children that worry more about looking after the other children and helping the parents out, look after a big family.
Okay. All right. So toward the goal of existence. The ultimate goal is existence.
There's no goals. No, I said it's an unconscious process that's no different from the process that caused replicating molecules to be more dominant.
And why are you consciously trying to promote that which promotes existence?
Why I'm doing it? Well, I'm doing it because evolution has armed me with a brain, which means I've got to be clever. It means I can control my environment, and I can also. And it means I have to, and also by being clever, it means I have to be able to reason, I have to be able to argue, I have to be able to understand the world around me. And to understand the world around me means I can see where there are errors. And I can see that you are an error. And you, just as you might see, your brain has given you the ability to make teeth in a particularly good way, or whatever, all the other crafts that you have, which I think is a very commendable, I think I rate craft and design and that sort of thing very highly. So the brain has become more to be able to do those sorts of things as a Stone Age, to be able to carve, use stone axes and things to make yourself get more food, which means you live longer and you can breed more. So there's all these sorts of advantages you gather by having a big brain, big consciousness, being able to think, being able to understand the world around you. And when you understand the world around you, that also means you have to understand other people and what their motives are. And the fact that, as I described to you, if you were in the Stone Age and you broke your leg outside your cave and I was in the next door cave, I would come and help you, because I was hoping you might reciprocate that when I come out and get bitten by a saber-toothed tiger, and you come along and drag me back and nurture me with a bit of food that you've saved in your stock. So that's the sort of where conscience comes from, and sort of cooperative behavior, and those are advantageous. If I'd been a slug and got caught out like that, the slug in the next door cave wouldn't have been interested at all.
Okay, well, I think you sufficiently, reduced me to tears on this issue. Why don't we go back to causality?
Isn't that one? But okay, let's move on to the let's just go through some of the properties. So we're into an hour into this, so I don't want to. Yeah, so okay, we've still got time for me to do my presenting to you the evidence of how the world works. So let's quickly go through some of the other things that you think. Well, actually, I thought I reasonably refuted your business about the self-existent thing is necessarily unchanging. And for a start, I mean, you think that God created humans and goodness knows what else, and dinosaurs. Well, that's all. This self-existent being seems to be doing a lot of changing, it seems to be, not only to himself, because the universe, if you regard, do you regard the universe as part of God, or is just God outside it? Is the universe...
Well, yeah, it depends on what you want to define universe. If you want to define the universe as all that is, obviously God is a part of that. But I'm making an ontological distinction between being and becoming. That's a necessary corollary.
Now, you see, you've used becoming there, and that you've completely screwed up the meaning of that phrase for me.
Why? What's wrong with becoming? It just means change.
Oh, well, does it mean change? Okay, that's fine, if that's what it means. So,
so if you want to say self-existence changes, you're saying it's becoming and being at the same time in the same relationship, and you violate the law of identity.
Whoa, I've lost you. Now you've done it again. We've already established that there's nothing necessary about a self-existent thing not being able to change. You've not demonstrated, you've not provided any reason whatsoever, any deductive argument or any other sort of argument as to why a self-existent thing can't change. And while you think on that, I'll just list the other things I've got here of you. You claim a self-existent thing. And as I say, I'm going to demonstrate self-existent things you call them basically uncaused. I'm going to be demonstrating those later in this hangout. And they are going to be capable of change. They're not going to be timeless. They're not going to be spaces. They're also going to be material. So all these properties that you have decided that a self-existent thing have, you've not shown any reason whatsoever. And I think, and all the multiples of them. For instance, I think Floyd FP was correctly identified. Well, you could have one or have 600 self-existent pixels. There's no reason why it's limited to one. There's nothing in your reasoning you've offered to say is why you can't have more than one self-existent thing. And as I will be demonstrating later, you can.
No, you can't.
Well, you can. Well, show me the logic.
Okay. Well, if you've got two identical self-existent beings and they're not the exact same ontology in all their characteristics, there's going to be some distinction between their ontological characteristics, and one will be able to react with the other, and the one that is acted upon will be the contingent, and the one that is
who's to say a self-existent thing can't become contingent after it becomes into existence? Prove that.
Yeah, it cannot be this. It cannot be and not be the same. That what it is and what it is and not at the same time.
No, it can change. It can change. Yeah, things can. You've established things can change generally. We see.
But it's not self-existent. You understand that? You don't understand the.
No, you're just stating that. You see, you're doing it. You're just stating that as though you've provided a deductive proof for saying that something is self-existent.
It's what the word means.
No, it doesn't. It means it's not. Well, that's why I tried to identify what it meant earlier, and I've just defined self-existent just to mean that it's uncaused. And you seem to sort of agree with that, though you then slip.
Yeah, but you're saying uncaused that it is an effect. Uncaused is an effect by definition, and so it's uncaused. It cannot happen because a cause is not an effect.
Sorry, just give me that again.
A cause is something that ultimately does not happen. It must. You cannot have becoming without being. If you're
you've used becoming. You've used becoming again. You see. Do you mean coming to existence?
No, just change. Becoming. Now, of course, that which is becoming is dependent. That's what contingent means.
You've used becoming again. I don't understand becoming. Could you please not use the word becoming and use a different word?
Well, change is the word.
I understand that. I understand that.
It is moving. It is change. All right, let's talk about Heraclitus. All right, he said that everything is changing. Nothing is the same. When you put your foot into a river and you take the river.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I mean, everything's jiggling around. If it's warm, it's jiggling around. There are lots of photons.
If it's pure becoming, if it's pure change.
Whoa, we've just said pure becoming. I don't understand what that means.
I said if it's pure becoming, if it's pure change.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I interrupted you too. Sorry, Trey. That was me being a disc wrong there. Sorry.
Okay, if it's pure change, and there's no ontology that doesn't give continuity to ontology, then it's really nothing.
You've confused me now. I lost you from the second word.
Ontology is just being.
I know. So let's just try and stick to. I know what ontology means, but the way you used it, and this is unfortunately part of the problem, is you try and often you've actually been very good in this hangout. Actually, I have to give you that. You've been much better behaved than I thought you. When you've tried to use. Remember, a clever person tries to use the most simple language I can. If you take Aussie, for example.
That's my whole deal. That's why.
Well, you don't, though. You see, you don't. You use simple words sometimes that are equivocations.
Well, I try not to do that.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that. This is good stuff, Trey. You see, you're coming along. Actually, you're coming along.
This is not so painful as I thought, huh?
No, yes, perhaps I've administered some anesthesia here, and you don't realise what's happening. And
well, thank you for your charity.
Yes, I perhaps I have been nicer than I thought. And you're suffering a little bit less, but I was actually looking forward to you suffering a bit more. But we haven't come to the major suffering. The major suffering is going to come shortly.
I think I would quite enjoy having a meal with you.
Most people do. Right. Yes, you used some phrase about, we were talking about, you slipped in, we were talking about self-existence again, and you slipped in this definition about, you used some this chappie with the water, the one, everything's changing, and then you slipped in some phrase about, because something's always changing, it's not real or something. I can't remember now what it was.
Yes.
It's not becoming, and use the phrase, use the word, you use becoming, which is a simple word, but unfortunately you use it in such a way that the Aristotelian or whatever phrase I dislike intensely, which has extra meaning, and they may have understood it clearly then, presumably because they had a more limited vocabulary, and they didn't have the more specific words that we use today. They had to use all these everyday words and then equivocate on them. So if we can, I would like to use words that have fewer equivocations, and then we can all know what we're talking about. Okay. So if you would like to describe that thing about if something's becoming, then it's not change. Well, the changing thing.
If it's pure change, then it's really nothing.
Sorry. Right. I didn't even understand. What's pure change? What does that mean?
If it's always
what's it? So, hold on.
If there's no continuity of existence.
Let's try and do it. Let's define the it. So let's talk about a person, shall we? If that will help. So if a person is pure change, that doesn't make any sense.
Let's imagine. All right. So listen. Let me complete the analogy for Heraclitus. You put your foot in the water and you take your water out. The river is not the same river because it's changed. You are not the same.
Yeah.
Because you have changed. But wait a minute. Isn't there some identity to the rumpus? And that somebody would know you after you put your foot in that water and it changed? And isn't there some continuity of existence about you?
Right. Did you know that you change every single atom of your body every 7 years?
That's right. And is it still you? Is it still you?
Yeah, that's right. Materially, you are no longer there. All the atoms you had in your body have gone. They've been replaced with atoms.
So are you existence? Is there some continuity of existence with you?
Yes, because I'm basically a machine, and there's a pattern. I mean, this is an issue about patterns which people don't often understand.
So there's some being about you that doesn't change, right?
Well, it's the pattern.
I'm not saying ultimately, but there is this interchange between being and becoming, and you're not all changing all the time. If you're changing all the time, there would be no identity. There wouldn't be the rumpus because it's always changing.
I'm obviously changing. I'm obviously, as we've agreed, I'm changing quite a lot. I'm always changing to some small or lesser degree. The neurons in my brain. I mean, for instance, I'm speaking to you. There's the neurons are generating extra connections to remember what you said. And so I've got a different brain now than I did have a few seconds ago because I've remembered what you said, or possibly not remembered it. And so I am changing. My brain is changing all the time. But you start off with it. So the thing that remains, but the thing that remains is the pattern. So my veins and things are still in the same place, and they replace them with other atoms, and so the material has changed, and my neurons have changed. But there is a pattern there that remains, and having come into existence by whatever means, that pattern because it can replicate itself, because it's got the replicative capabilities and the fixing maintenance capabilities, that machine, we are a machine, can take other material and refix it. So that machine, once it's in place, can fix itself, and even though all the material is chucked away. So why that's not a difficult? That concept is completely happy. Any evolutionist is happy with that concept. Why is this? Do you think this is controversial or something? What are you trying to teach me?
I'm just saying that there must be continuity of existence in order. If everything is pure change,
continuity of existence. Well, you need to say that all my atoms are not going to fly apart. Yes, okay. So providing all my atoms and molecules and my proteins and my neurons all stick together, then I will continue to exist. Yes. So if there's no continuity, i.e., my neurons and all my atoms are suddenly separated, then I wouldn't exist. Yes. So what's interesting about that?
Well, so you're conceding that the necessity of being and becoming.
Now, hold on. Necessity of being. What does that mean?
Of unchangeableness, in some sense. Of course, we're not self-existent.
There's a pattern to me that, I mean, if you imagined a car, for instance, that could fix itself, and there will come a time, or a robot that could fix itself, and there will come a time when it can do this. And we manufactured that. that could maintain itself, pour oil in itself, replace bits that fell off, would you give that some sort of special status? Because we're no different to that.
I'm just saying. My only point, Rumpus, is saying that
I mean, it's almost the Sorry, I took up one. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's our genes, of course. It's the program within our genes that gives us our any timelessness you might want to think that it has got a program for fixing ourselves and breeding and behaving the way that we do, and our biochemistry to work such that we continue to exist. So it's that program. It's actually that little piece of that bit of software almost inside our genes that is the thing that's maintained. And even though that gets corrupted actually as time, but fundamentally the thing that's maintained is our genetic makeup. And even though that gets replaced, even though the components of the genes in us, because the cells get replaced, it's that program that identifies us that continues, even though it does get corrupted as time goes on. So you can think of that, if you like, as being the thing that continues is the arrangement of our genes in the cells of our body. That's the thing that continues. And that pattern, it's the pattern of those that continues, even though the things that make up the pattern, the storage mechanism, the molecules that make up that information change, the pattern is maintained. So that's what continues. Okay, well, great. Well, great. So what are you trying to prove with that?
So you're saying that if everything is pure change and there is no continuity, no pattern.
Well, you just said pure change. What does that mean?
I'm sorry?
What does pure change mean? So you just said if everything is pure change, what do you mean by that?
If there is no pattern, then there is no existence.
Well, electrons exist. They don't have a pattern. Sorry, you said something about pure change. Why am I pure change? I'm not pure change. Are you talking about me?
If there is no pattern.
What were you talking about being pure change? You said something was pure change. I don't know what it was.
If there's anything that is pure change, it has no pattern to it.
If there's anything that's pure change,
it doesn't have any identity. There's no identity.
I have no idea what you mean by something is pure change. That doesn't mean that doesn't make sense to me. That's not English.
Well, that's the point. You can't understand it because you've got to invoke continuity, in other words, being and becoming, in order to make sense.
So you started off with something that's, you're saying you started off with some piece of idiocy, and then you've piled something else on it, and I'm supposed to make comments on that. Surely, if you say nothing can be pure, I have no idea what you're saying. If you saying something is pure change, I'm material. If you're talking about me, try and give an example, or you're saying you can't. Okay, you're suggesting
you can't. I'm asking you. Show me something that's pure change that has no pattern.
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
You give me an example of something that's pure change.
I don't understand what pure change means.
That has no pattern and no continuity of existence.
Well, I don't understand what pure change is, so I can't give you an example of something I don't understand.
Well, something that has no consistent identity to it. There's no such thing.
Something that has no consistent identity to it. Well, I mean, is a photon? Do you think a photon has consistent identity?
Indeed, it does.
Okay.
Because it's called a photon.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. What about things? So, what about something that? Well, photons can change into other. What about a quark that can?
But a photon does certain things, and it does not do certain things, right?
Yes, it has properties. Yes. Yes,
okay,
it has
properties. There we go. So, remember we talked about pattern. Remember pattern?
Yes, we did. We did. Yes, we did talk about pattern.
So existence without a pattern, or existence without a property. I mean, there must be definition to everything. There must be being and becoming. Now, becoming is not necessity, but being.
When you say becoming, do you mean coming into existence?
It can mean that, but it just means change.
Okay, so right, so can you use that phrase again without the use of the word becoming?
Which word?
You said a phrase just now that I couldn't do something, and you used the word becoming. If you could rephrase that, please, without using the word becoming, I would appreciate it.
I forgot what it was.
No. Okay. Well, I think we've done enough on this self-existence stuff, and we moved on to patterns here. Let me just have a look at the other things that I thought. Right, we've gone to 21. Okay, we've done this for an hour and 10 minutes. How much longer do you think you're going to go with this?
Whatever's good for you. I mean, I don't want to go on for 2 hours. I've got a ton of stuff to do this afternoon.
Oh, exactly. So I just want to know. So your time limit is 2 hours. So you're talking about another 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But it might be less if you get a headache or bitten by the dog or something. Okay. Well, let's say okay. If we aim for say about half an hour, then that gives me an extra guarantees. But I think we're probably going to finish this that sort of time, right? So we've yes, I must admit I've this property of patterns, yes, which you properties of things. Yes, and you, even though you've dodged, I mean, you've managed to deflect me from homing in on your. You never did. I asked you to provide a deductive argument or any other sort of argument for why. Well, of course, you defined what self-existent. You slipped in unchanging as a definition of a self-existent. Possibly we should move on, just in case this does get. But then again, I think, yeah, I'm actually moving on. Possibly to my area. We could possibly spend a little bit more time on this, although we could move on to cause and effect, because that would give you an opportunity to talk about your first cause and the difference between events and causes and things. And you could then, because you were admonishing me at the start, you were getting quite a bit irate about events and causes and effects, and you would then, I said that we will discuss this later, and you've probably forgotten what it was you were going to make, but perhaps we could talk about that now, and your view on causes and effects, and perhaps tell people how you regard causes and effects. You've given us an inkling before, but give us another go.
Sure. Okay. So my contention is that you've got it exactly backward. You're saying we understand cause and effect because we observe it in the external world, and I'm saying no. Cause and effect is a logical corollary relationship that we use to determine. That we use to interpret the information that we have on the outside world. So you just said it's interpreting the outside world then. So you're using it as a way of interpreting what's happening in the outside world. By way of the law of non-contradiction, yes. That's our presupposition at the beginning.
Yeah, well, no one's disputing that. We haven't violated that yet, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, good. Now, so something, for example, can you give me a definition of the term effect without invoking the term cause, or that effect, something of that effect?
No, I can't.
Okay, so the principle of causality, every event or every effect must have a cause, is analytically true, right?
By definition, yes. An effect is defined as having a cause, and a cause is defined as causing an effect.
Okay.
Yeah, by linguistic definition, yes. So I could define squidge and squodge and say that squidges
is an effect, and squodge is a cause.
And a squodge is a squidge. I could make that linguistic definition. Fine. Okay.
So it doesn't. But I'm not talking about the linguistic definition. I'm talking about the concept.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's true.
It's analytically true.
Yeah. Analytically true, right? Okay, let me. Yes, I should probably now. This was something I meant to be thinking about hard, but I think I'm probably going to give you that one. No, hold on. I think there might be some problems here.
Okay.
Let me just hold on, think on that, because that's quite a big question to me. I think there are lots of people who don't agree with that.
I've not talked to them.
Yes. So let me see. You think analytically true that? Yes. Yes. I can't think of an immediate objection to that, but I'm going to give you that provisionally for the sake of argument. But I'm not
think about it too. That's fine. Just provisionally granted.
I'm not happy about that necessarily. Cause and effect being analytic. No, I think there. No, you see, right? There are problems because you see, you can't, in theory. I mean, this is getting a bit philosophical and radical. That you can in the real world. Well, I don't know what you're thinking of a theoretical world. There's nothing logically necessary that requires that you can say that the relationship has to continue existing, continue to be what it is. If you say cause and effect, there's nothing, for instance, there's nothing logically that necessitates that the universe can't disappear or change. I mean, for instance, it's quite conceivable that the constants of the universe, for instance, we have a number of fundamental constants of the universe like G, Planck's constant, and other things, which could. We don't know, for instance, the fundamental constant of the universe will not change overnight, that we don't know the sun will necessarily appear. There's nothing logically necessary about that, although it's obviously very likely. We cannot know for a fact that the constants in the universe will not change between the start of this hangout and the next. Now, obviously, from induction, we can say that that's extremely unlikely. We've never witnessed such a thing, and it doesn't seem that there's nothing in our physics, or there's nothing that says that. And I think that invalidates the analytical relationship between cause and effect.
Did you not earlier refer to the principle of parsimony?
Yes, I didn't actually, but I'm willing. Yes, if we go down that route, yes, I agree. This is where I probably I'm not. This is where I'm sort of dabbling in a bit of philosophy. And this is not an area I like to go into, because I much prefer to work in what I perceive to be the real world and what is most probable. But if you say something, because when you say philosophically something is true, you have to allow for every single stupid exception. That's why I don't like to. So when you say something's an analytical truth or something, that means that it is absolutely under all possible ridiculous things you can think about. Whereas I tend to prefer the real world, where you can say, well, this is using induction. You know, like why the sun comes up every day is going to come up again. But when you and this is more your area, the philosophical area, and philosophers could easily make a case, I suspect, for saying that that's not an analytical truth, because they can allow for the outrage. But I would be try and agree with you that in a real practical sense, that what you say is true. But I suspect there are philosophers who would love to be really, 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 really rigorous, who would say that it's not true. But I'm going to let you have it, because I want to live in a sort of probabilistic sort of way.
Well, you would agree, though, that you would have to violate the principle of parsimony in order to disagree with me.
I would agree. Yeah, yes, okay. I would agree with that.
Okay, good, thanks. All right, so I forgot what we were talking about.
Sorry, we're talking about cause and effect, and you were telling me about analytically true that.
Oh, that an effect. All right, yes, so if it's true, if causality is analytically true, then if someone were to talk about an effect without invoking a cause, it would be nonsense, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's what you're doing.
What? What am I doing?
You cannot talk about an effect without there being a cause.
Correct.
And a cause, I'm sorry?
Yes, correct. You're right, absolutely right. If I can't talk about an effect without a cause, absolutely correct.
Okay, so is the universe changing?
Yes.
Okay, then it's an effect by definition, right?
Bits of it are changing. Well, bits of it. Don't forget, there's nothing that something that's comes into an event which is the cause of the creation of the universe doesn't mean to say that after that point there's nothing that says that something that comes into existence without a cause carries on.
Now, wait a minute. You just said that to talk about something happening without a cause, it's nonsense. Remember that?
No. No. This is the fundamental where you go completely potty. There are cause and effects, but an event does not have a cause. Just because
is an event an effect?
No, absolutely not.
Why? How's it different? Tell me.
It doesn't have a cause. There are these.
No. You're just defining it into existence. Is an event an effect?
No.
Okay, so how it happens though, right?
When you say it happens, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, an event changes. In other words, it wasn't, and then it was.
I'm prepared to let you use. Yes, I'm prepared to let you happen to that. An event happens. Yes. So, for instance, a firework goes off. That's an event, but it also happens to be an effect.
And you're saying the universe was an event, right?
Correct.
Okay. So did it happen itself before it existed? You can't talk about an effect or an event without invoking a cause, and that's what you're doing.
No,
it's irrational.
I can because it's an uncaused event is an event. I'm saying there are things in the universe, and for which I will give you videos later on of uncaused events. I will be giving you practical.
How do you know that they're uncaused?
Real world.
Remember, again, you're getting it backwards again. You're trying to take the external world to define the logic. It's the logic that defines the external world.
Well, yeah, but the only logic you've got is because you've decided that the word
you're the one
that's
just defining things into existence.
No. You have decided that the word event has to be equal to an effect. I'm saying
insofar as it happens, right?
But yes, because something happens doesn't make it an effect. It's an event. Then if an event has a cause,
all I need is something to happen. Now you're on my side.
You're saying that because something happens, you're saying it therefore must be an effect. So your deduction is, here we have an event, and it happens. The event occurs. Therefore, you're saying, you're deducing from that there is a cause. That piece of logic is wrong. Wrong.
So the universe. All right, so the universe had no ontological status, right?
Ontological status.
Before it was. There was
Correct.
nothing, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then
that's my personal.
Then an event, which is the same as an effect.
No, it's
except
not,
for
because an effect has a cause, an event. I mean, just in English,
you are scrapping here.
No, this is very simple. The word event does not mean the same as the word effect. Why are you having a problem with this?
You're just making a convenient equivocation.
No, it's not an equivocation, because event's not the same word. To me,
that's what you're doing. You're just making an artificial distinction. The only distinction you say is that it's special pleads. In other words, it is the kind that doesn't have to be called an effect. It's a game you're playing. And I don't think you're doing it. I think you've been told that. You just believe it.
No, let me just. There's numerous things you've just gone wrong. It's absolute drivel. First of all, an equivocation is the use of the same word to mean different things. So I'm not equivocating, because I'm using the word.
The concept is the same, and you're putting two words on it.
No, the concept is completely different.
No,
the meaning of the word event. I mean, events can be.
It's not a cause. It's not cause. Other than to say it's not cause, how's it different? You're just special pleading.
So therefore, it's different. The word event has a different meaning if it's uncaused.
What is the difference in the concept other than saying it's irrational and uncaused? You grant it, and it's the same thing with the evolutionary argument.
That's the difference. An uncaused event is different from an effect because there's no cause. Would you like me to use a different word for the word? You don't seem to be allowing me to use the word event. Would you like me to use the word splodge? And I will say there are splodges that occur that cause material things to happen in the universe that have no cause. If you prefer me to get word from away from the word event, which apparently you've decided is the same as effect, you've equated those two words. You
haven't differentiated them. In other words, except to make the argument that an irrational is rational. You can't do that.
Where did that come from? Hold on. I'm now. Let me define a new word. It's called splodge.
Okay.
The word splodge means that something happens materially, but you go for materially, for which there is no cause. And I'm using the word splodge, and I'm giving its definition there. And that splodge is what what happened when the universe created. And those same splodges are going to be videos of which I'm going to be showing you later in this hangout.
Mm-hmm.
And
in effect, they are effects without causes, right?
Which means they cease to be effects. Yes. I mean, if you want, you could abuse English language by saying.
You'd be embarrassed by this. I mean, come on.
I'm embarrassed for you. I mean, a child.
I'm reduced to tears.
Well, I mean, this is where the pain perhaps starts, because a child. I would have thought a 16-year-old could understand that a cause and effect.
I would say a 3-year-old could understand.
Exactly. So why are you having a problem? Cause and effect are two linked terms. They have to have one or the other. If I have something else that changes the material something. So, for instance, let's suppose an electron. Let's have an electron pops into existence. If it's not caused, it's not an effect.
Okay, but here's the thing: how do you know it's uncaused? This is the problem. It looks like it's uncaused, but it's not uncaused because causality is analytic. This is the problem. You have to throw off the law of non-contradiction in order to say that something makes itself important.
No, you see, this is where you need to step through. Right now, you've asked an excellent question there. How can I know this event, this theoretical event that's occurred, this creation of electron? You've asked me now, how can I show that's uncaused? Now, that is an intelligent question. Because
I'm glad I'm intelligent.
Well, it's an intelligent question. Unfortunately, you weren't having intelligence beforehand. You came by accident. Or part of R.C. Sproul gave it to you. But it's not that intelligent. Well, I suppose I did say it was an intelligent question. It was an appropriate question to make, because what your basic thrust is, we have all these things, these events, and you're going to say, that I can find a cause for all these events is what your basic thrust. And I'm going to say, no, you can't find a cause for all these events. And I can show that you can't find a cause for it. Although, well, actually, I can't logically with necessity. I can give very good reasons to show.
Boom. You can't even begin to reason it because you're violating the law of non-contradiction.
Now you can't just throw in this what you believe is a trump card. Demonstrate how what I've just said, that an uncaused event is violating the law of non-contradiction.
Excellent. Okay, here. All right. So you conceded that the law of non-contradiction is a valid starting point, that we must have it in order to filter this information, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So something cannot be and not be at the same time and in the same relationship, right?
Correct.
Okay. So for an event to happen out of nothing, at that point it must be and not be at the same time. The same.
But time t is equal to 1. It exists.
What is t?
What t for time? Sorry, it's a time.
What is time? Define it for me.
It's 21:26 in the UK.
No.
That's the time. That's
how
the
do
current time.
how do you measure that? How do you know? How's it measured?
Well, I mean, conceptually rather than practically, you mean? I mean, obviously, lots of you're obviously familiar with lots of practical ways of measuring it. I mean, we measure it by the motion of things that we can rely on. Things like
that's right. I mean, we use atomic clocks now. We used to use
atomic clocks. That's what I was thinking of. I can't remember I can't remember if they're oscillating at a particular frequency.
That's right.
Because at a certain thingy. So that's how we measure things very accurately. We know that these atoms jiggle around, and we know how many jiggles that occur, and therefore we know how much time's passed because we can measure the jiggles.
That's right. So we are measuring matter relating to motion. That is what time is, right?
Well, of course, that changes if we speed it up, slow it down, put it near any gravitational. If we put it near the Earth, it changes what happens. So we can't rely on this. We have to make lots of allowances.
But all I'm saying, though, that time is merely.
Well, I mean, we interact. We deal with matter. So obviously, we're trying to get matter to give us this information. I mean, photons. If you could regard photons as matter, we can do clever things with photons. But normally, we deal with matter. So it's convenient for us to use matter, and it behaves in certain ways that gives us measures of time. Yes.
So what is time without matter?
Well, so we measure time with matter, but what's time without matter? I mean, just from a sort of intuitive way, an intuitive thing, I believe it progresses, but I think there are probably lots of philosophers and probably some physicists who believe that time can't happen without matter being present, but I couldn't justify that.
When you define it by the very matter itself.
Well, that's how we measure it. I don't think there's nothing necessarily. I don't think you can show a deductive argument to say that time does not pass without the existence of matter. I don't believe you can provide me with a logical.
That's what the definition of it is. Time is the experience of matter relating to motion.
No, that's how we measure it.
Right.
Well, that's
so how do you invoke time before there's matter?
Well, we don't know. I mean, basically, the answer is we don't. I mean, it's a philosophical question, I think, as to what time is. I'm not equipped.
But as far as we know, parsimoniously, we say that time is matter moving. Now you can say there's a concept of time outside that we don't know what it is.
No, we just use it. We just measure it. We don't know how anything more than that. I don't think we can really say. There are lots of theories. I mean, physicists try and work this out, and they haven't come to an agreement. And I'm prepared to accept if very clever physicists can't decide what time is, although they say we measure it. I mean, they claim with entropy that if you can. I mean, there are some that claim you can get. If entropy goes backwards, then time goes backwards, and that was a very fun thing about a couple of decades ago. But I don't think they went back on that idea. That it's a highly technical thing, and I'm not sure. There are clever physicists, I think, who argue over this, and I'm not equipped to argue with them over it. And I haven't read enough on the subject to know exactly. But what I know we're doing is we're measuring it, and I think there's a controversy, or at least a debate, as to what time actually is. And I'm prepared to let them argue it out before I try and come down firmly one side or the other. And I don't think you can say, and I don't think you can say necessarily that it's the matter, that it's the measurement of motion. I don't think you can say that's necessarily true.
Okay, well, if you want to call me wrong, then you need to demonstrate it.
Well, I can say you haven't. Well, you haven't demonstrated. You've just said. It's like saying the green pixies around the back of your window there.
That's what you're saying. I have given a definition. I have said time is. You told me time is matter related to motion. You said it could be more. We don't know. I'm saying, yeah, that's right, but demonstrate it such that it is more, or just go with the definition that we have.
Well, but this is an argument from ignorance.
That's what you're trying to do. You're saying, oh, it might be something we don't understand. Well,
no, I'm not saying it's an argument. I'm saying that we might not know. That's not an argument, because that's the opposite of an argument. For instance, I'm saying, you're saying you've got one explanation, and because we don't know of any others, therefore that's the explanation. That's an argument from ignorance. I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying there are other possible alternatives to that.
Now demonstrate them.
Well, I don't know. I haven't worked them out, but I believe there's a logical space. I mean, this is like saying, you know, this is exactly the sort of reasoning that led people to believe the sun was a chariot. Someone would say, oh, look, and time's gone by, look, there's a chariot. And someone would say, well, prove me wrong that it isn't. Come up with a different idea. And because they didn't come up with a different idea, they say, oh, it's a chariot going through space. I'm
not telling you. You have agreed with me on the existence of time being matter related to motion, have you not?
No, I said that's how we measure it.
Okay, and that's all that we know about it, empirically speaking, right?
Well, I'm assuming there are lots of papers and theories and scientific papers about how theoretical physicists that I'm not familiar with. I'm in a position of ignorance as to the exact details of what people are proposing. If you want to prove, you've got to demonstrate that you're not doing an argument, that in fact you've got one explanation and there were no others. You have to demonstrate.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
I have demonstrated what it is, and you have agreed with it. And I said we can't go beyond that.
Look, no, you haven't demonstrated. You've just said this is my theory. And that's it. You haven't
conceded my theory, right?
I haven't defeated your theory. No.
No, you have conceded it.
No. When did I'm telling you. Well, I'm telling you I haven't. I'm telling you what my position is. You can't tell me what my position is.
No, I'm saying you have conceded that time is matter relating to motion, right?
No, I haven't. I said that's how we measure it.
And I'm saying that's the only way we know of it thus far, right?
I'm prepared, as far as I know. Possibly, you might be right on that. I don't know. I mean, if you want to go with if you want, for the sake of argument, we can progress on this, and we can say yes, and you can take the argument from that point onwards, if you like.
Well, I'm just saying that you're saying that at T0 there was some kind of situation. Well, there is no T0 because there's no matter.
Right. Okay. Well, perhaps T0 was okay. Well, that's looking backwards. I mean, there is no time in this non-causal in this creation of the universe. Yes, I mean it's obviously very complicated. But again, this is an argument from ignorance you're providing, saying this is what happens to time. Whether there is a t is equal to 0, obviously we're measuring it from our now to what t is equal to 0. We don't know what happened beforehand, and all we know is that
so the t needs to disappear, right?
So the what? Sorry.
The t to T0 needs to disappear, right? There is no such thing as time.
In the pre-universe situation, is that what you're talking about? Sorry, where's this no T0?
Well, I mean, that's what you said. There was this time of T0. Well,
that exists. I mean, if we accept that the universe had a beginning, there is a 0, just like there's a 0 on the number line. If the universe came into existence, that's T is equal to 0.
Well, to even speak about time is kind of nonsensical.
Well, no, if time came into existence at the time of the universe, by definition, it's T is equal to 0.
Material. So you're basically saying when material came into existence,
yes,
we are giving it a name of T0, even though it really doesn't make sense. But that's okay. So there was absolutely nothing, and then something. You don't like the word "happen," but an event happened.
Well, if you mean coming to, why don't you just say come into existence if that's what you mean?
Coming into existence, yes. There's no ontology, then there is an ontology, and you're saying that doesn't violate the law of non-contradiction.
Correct.
Okay, so something is not and is at the same time the same relationship at that moment.
No, it wasn't in existence at T minus. There was no at T before T is equal to 0. There was nothing. Well, like I say, it's outside the domain of this time, and at T is equal to 0, there was something. So it spontaneously turned up. And this might be, and I can now.
So it's an effect, and it's not an effect without a cause.
Correct. It's not an effect. It's an event. Okay, well,
that's too hard to deal with.
Well, okay, right. Well, this might be an excellent point for me to begin my little presentation of how the world really works, and then you can perhaps see what you think of it, and then the screaming might begin, perhaps. And
that's fine.
Perhaps the pain has been delayed so far. Right. Well, I'll show you how the world really works. Can you right now? This is where. Can you see that? Hold on. Sorry, I'm being stupid. And if this fails, I'm going to go bonkers. Can you see yourself?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Right. This is how the world really works. Can you see that time-independent Schrodinger equation there?
You know what? Hold on just a minute. I need to click on
If you could make that big, make it bigger, so your screen bigger, so you can see it and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see my pointer and things?
Yes, I can.
Right. Can you see there's something here called the time-independent Schrodinger equation?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Can you? I've moved to another window over. Can you see underneath this? Is that anything changed there? Is anything obscuring anything? Oh, great. Okay.
You can see it.
Okay, great. You can still see the time. You can still see the word time-independent Schrodinger equation.
Mm-hmm.
Great, brilliant. And can you see to the right? There's a little animation here.
Yes.
That is what a particle actually looks like. That is the time-independent Schrodinger equation. This is a particular one. This is a variation. The Schrodinger equation is basically how the world works. This is what defines quantum physics. And it matches the energy of a particle, which is with the thing on the right-hand side here, this business of, and that's a Hamilton.
What is energy?
Sorry?
What is energy?
You don't really want me to. I don't. That's not necessarily.
Just tell me nobody knows what it is. That's all I ask.
Oh, well, we do. It's actually called. It's force times distance.
No, I didn't ask for the mathematical equation. I asked for its ontological distinction. The definition. What is it?
The ontological. Well, energy is just the product. I mean, but the definition of energy is the force times the distance. So, for instance, it's a conceptual thing. So, for instance, if you lifted up a kilogram from the floor and you lifted it up by 1 meter, that would have that's 10. That would be 10 joules of energy. You multiply the force, which is for 1 kilogram is about 10 newtons, and multiply by the distance you moved it. You have given that object of 1 kilogram 10 joules of energy. The product energy is measured in joules, and its definition is by the force you've had to move something by the distance, and that is the fundamental definition of energy. But it can come into.
That's the definition of what it can do. But I was asking what it was in its ontological status. What is it?
Well, I'm
not asking what it can do, and I'm not asking for the mathematical equation on how you measure how it works. I'm asking what it is.
Well, it's just the product of force times distance. It's nothing more than that.
Okay. Well, let's move on.
It doesn't exist. There's nothing. You can't point at something and say that's energy.
Right.
You can.
But you speak of it as if it is something, right?
Well, in maths and science, it's very useful to talk about that product. Because, I mean, just like, for instance, if I said, here's this kilogram that's sitting 1 meter above the ground, you can do useful things with it. You could, if I let it drop, it will, fall on a cat or something, fall on your foot, and or you can make it drive something. And so it's very useful, and it also makes things move. That's potential energy, by the way. When you lift force times distance, you've gathered 10 joules of potential energy, and if you release it, and it falls back down to where it came from, it releases that energy, and it becomes kinetic energy. And actually, that's what this equation here actually combines, the moving energy. So, for instance, when something moves, there's an equivalent amount of energy you can think like a spring. So, for instance, when a spring oscillates, or pendulum, when the pendulum stops moving, all the energy in the pendulum is held in potential energy, and then when it swings back and goes to the bottom of its swing, all the energy is in kinetic energy. So it's a transfers between kinetic and potential energy. Those are the two forms of energy you can get. And this equation equates this bit here. I don't know if you're familiar with things like, you don't need to understand this equation, but this equation encapsulates the energy of combined with the potential energy, like the height of a kilogram held up in the air, and with its movement energy. And so obviously at some point when you're dropping a kilogram down, halfway down, it's got so much potential. If it's a half a meter, it's got half the energy is in potential energy, and the other half is in kinetic energy. So this term here is saying this is how it sums up the potential and kinetic, and this is the total energy. But these are mathematical constructions, and they're very useful because and we'll recreate them. I mean, Newton, for instance, had no concept of energy. He only understood forces. Energy, the concept of energy, although it's based on a Greek word, was only invented in the 19th century when they had to deal with steam engines, things, and they wanted to drive things and horsepower. Up to that point, they did not have a concept of energy. It's just a mathematical construct. It just turns out it's preserved. Lots of things. Well, everything preserved. Well, energy is preserved in the universe, and because it's one of these quantities that's preserved, and including in particles and things like, you may have heard of E is equals mc squared, you can actually turn energy into mass. So if I have so much energy, if I fiddle with that energy in a certain way, I can actually create mass out of it. You have to fiddle with it quite a lot to do that, but they are equivalent. And similarly, if that kilogram mass that I was talking about, if you turned that into pure energy, you would have one hell of an explosion. But it was a concept that was only invented in the 19th century. So it's not a thing. It's a mathematical construct, really.
What is that thing you're speaking of? Is it has an ontological status and it's doing things? Does energy do things?
Well, do you think when I hold a kilogram at a meter above the ground, do you think that's doing anything? It's got potential energy. It's not doing anything. And if when you say doing things, you're implying motion. If I drop it, it then creates a motion of that object.
When you describe that, you speak of it as having energy force. In other words, there's energy that's doing something. Do you not?
No, potential energy is not doing anything. And no,
what about kinetic energy?
Sorry, things have energy. I mean, that'd be more correct to say. So when something's moving,
so there is so things have this property of something that's real.
But it's just a product of its motion and its mass in terms of kinetic energy. And if you press a spring or a pendulum, and if I raise a pendulum, for instance, up, it has the potential. It's just a mathematical way of describing the situation of a raised pendulum or a kilogram that's in the air. So it's not a thing. It's just a mathematical way of determining how it will behave.
Well, it is a thing. You're equivocating again. It is a thing. I
well,
mean, you're speaking of it as if it's a thing, and you're saying it's not a thing.
Yeah. If you think of a mathematical abstract construction as a thing, then it's a thing, but it's not a material thing. So is that okay? Because we can have abstract nouns, and when I talk about being pain, if I say to you, if your leg, when I start rooting out your problems in this, and you get into pain, you will say pain is a thing, but it's not. It's an abstract noun. The same with energy, in effect.
Yes, but pain is just a descriptive. You're talking about energy as if it is actually acting upon something and doing something.
Well, the force is definitely there, but no, energy is a description.
Well, you're saying this ontological thing called energy has the characteristic of force. That's one of
an element of it has. So there are some parts of the energy description is defined as force times distance.
Okay.
So it's a mathematical product of the force.
No, the description is mathematically derived or is mathematically described, but you're not. It's not, the mathematical description is not force. Don't tell me that.
No, it's not. No, as I said, energy is equal to force times the distance you've applied the force. So if I lift a kilogram mass off the ground and lift it up by a meter, I have given that kilogram 10 joules of energy. But it's just a mathematical. It's just a way of describing a force times distance. It's nothing more than that. And then the point is that this property, the force times the distance, is preserved in various motions and behaviors of things, and it's a very useful number to have. Let's say Newton didn't need it to do all his stuff, and it was just turned out that this product of two properties, two things, is a very useful thing. So it becomes very useful. I'm trying to find the equivalent in the real world where it's not a real thing. It's your balance, for instance, something like the account of your balance of your bank account. You could say that's a product of what you've been paid and what you've spent, and you could say that your balance in your bank account. It's a very useful thing a concept to have.
All right, we're running out of time. Can you just go ahead and move on?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. So there, and on the right hand here we have this wave that describes the motion, and that is the particle actually follows that wave. And I'm going to now present you with a video which hopefully we do two things. Can you see this video here?
Yes.
It's going to go on for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, I know this. I love this one.
Oh, do you? Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. That is Trey. I'm impressed with your willingness to investigate this. That's very illuminating. But I think it's a very fun video, and it'll do something at the end which will offer an uncaused event that I'll describe.
But go ahead.
but this is a video, so it's not in the real world. But it also builds up to the way it does it. Will encourage you and other people watching this video how the world works and how the Schrödinger equation, which I've just shown to you, determines how things behave. So it's a couple of minutes, but it's entertaining.
Go ahead.
Right. I don't know if you can. Can you hear that?
No, turn it up if you can.
Yeah. Balls of matter. If we randomly shoot
a little more if you can.
Say a marble at this
Excellent.
experiment, granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double-slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So when we throw things, that is matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange netherworld of quantum events. What is matter? Particles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave functions simply by observing.
Right. Hello. Right, do you get that?
I did indeed.
Brilliant. And now the bit at the end, I'm going to stop that. Right, this shape here. Oh, where's the bloody interference? Right, this interference pattern here. Oh God, where's the bloody thing gone? Right, this interference pattern you can see here. You can see everything. You can see my pointer, can you?
Yes.
Brilliant. Now this interference pattern here, which is because what's actually happening is that the Schrodinger equation that I showed you earlier is actually responsible for where the electrons go, and this wavy-like thing that the Schrodinger equation defines is the thing that actually interferes with itself, not the electron. The electron is just given orders by the Schrodinger wave equation, and it's the wave equation that interferes with itself and produces these patterns. But that equation that I showed you is a probabilistic thing. It is not deterministic. And so where any particular electron that comes out of here goes through here, it will end up randomly. The Schrodinger wave equation says that the probability of it behaving here is high and the probability of being here is low. But to any individual electron, we cannot determine where it goes. It is determined randomly. So we have an equation that says there will be this random behavior, and then in the real world we see this random behavior. We know that an electron coming out here, we cannot determine where it's going, and in effect when we have the interference around this point, there is not a deterministic route for that electron. It is where it actually ends up on here is not a matter of causation, it's a matter of randomness and probability. And I'm going to emphasize that point with the next bit. So that's one. That's an animation. So what I'm trying to bring, we actually have an uncaused event here. What happens the other side of that slit is not deterministic. It is random, and by randomness that means it's probabilistic. Well, I've already said that, which means there's no cause here. There's just a probability saying it will end up somewhere on that board. We do not know. Statistically, we know that if we fire 100 electrons, they're going to come with the shape. But any individual electron, because it's a probabilistic thing, we do not know what it's going to do. It's not caused.
Because now, you're ignorant of how the causality works does not mean that something does itself, creates itself before it exists. I mean, this is ridiculous. You think this is compelling?
Okay, hold on. No, I thought this is the argument. Basically, you're saying is I'm providing you with an argument from ignorance. It's basically what you're saying, because I can't prove this. Okay. I will be coming to that. Because the time's moving on, I want to get on. I will then come back to the point you've made there, but I just want to make a further little video here. Can you see this new video?
Yes.
Right. I'm going to provide you with another piece of. These are what atoms actually look like. Oh, hold on. Yes, you don't need to hear. There's no. So you're actually looking at
I've seen this one too. It's cool.
Right, brilliant. You're doing very. I'm impressed with you, Trev. You're actually thinking about things. And so here, basically what I'm trying to do with this thing is to validate the Schrodinger equation, and these things that you can see, these little bubbles that are atoms, you're looking at the electron shells. You're not, the atom, as you may know, consists of a nucleus surrounded by atoms, and the electrons surround the nucleus. And then IBM here are moving these atoms around. They're carbon monoxide atoms on a copper plate, and you're seeing this with a scanning and tunneling microscope with a magnification of 100 million times And in fact, so much so that if we made the atom the size, those atoms are the size of an orange, the Earth would be respectively, an orange would be as big as the Earth. And so this is IBM actually moving all these atoms individually, making up this little film. And those are electron shells you're looking at of carbon monoxide atoms. Okay, so I just thought you might be interested to see that, but obviously you've seen that before. And here, and indeed, now here we have a model of an atom. When that blue thing you can see staring at you is the electron shell of an electron moving between energy states, and it's just doing that randomly here. So here we've got the nucleus with I can't remember what it's trying to be. It's two things. I don't know whether that's I'm not quite sure what that's supposed
neutrons. To be. Protons and neutrons.
Yeah, sorry, yes, you're absolutely right. Well done. I'm trying to rush this because I'm trying to keep your time. Yes, you're absolutely well, very well done, Trey. Thank you. Yes, so we've got two protons and two neutrons. Yes, so I'm trying to rush and think a lot at the same time. And this is the electron cloud that's surrounding it, and it's changing in shape because it's changing its energy state. And here we can see the energy state changing on the right-hand side here with the electron cloud moving up and down, because as the energy of the electron changes, it changes its orbits around the nucleus. And this here represents the energy of the electron, and this is the shape of the electron. And here we have, now when the electron changes energy, because there is energy conservation, this concept of energy, which is so useful to us, which was invented in the 19th century, it's preserved. Energy is preserved in these movements. And so when an electron, as you saw here, the energy lost between the electron was initially in this state, and it's now moved into this state, changed the orbital, and in the process emitted the photon so that it would reduce in energy, but the energy that it had was emitted in the form of a photon. And here we go. And the more energy you have, the higher frequency it is, and the lower energy is lower frequency. Right, so I can actually now shift this electron on the right-hand side here up and down, and as you can see, it's growing, the electron orbitals are increasing, and every time I reduce the energy, it gives off a photon.
Right. Well, the photon hits it to knock it to the higher orbit, and then when it goes to a lower orbit, it emits a photon.
Correct. That's right. That's what I'm saying. So as I was reducing it, but to knock the energy up, a photon or some other energy source. So, for instance, the light. When you turn on an incandescent light bulb, the atoms jiggle around, and that actually excites the electrons and causes them to go into higher energy states. And then when they go down, they emit a photon that reflects the energy change. Now, that flipping down, that change of that from there to there is an uncaused event. We in science, and it's predicted by that Schrodinger equation I was showing you before, probabilistic, we have shown, well, science has shown that there is no cause for that to occur. It does it spontaneously or probabilistically. That's which is what the Schrodinger wave equation says happens. There is a probability that that transformation will take place. There is no way.
How do you know it's the same electron?
Sorry?
How do you know it's the same electron?
Well, we can do this with one electron.
Did you put a collar on it or what?
Yes, there are a hydrogen atom only has one electron, so you know that it's the same electron.
How do you know?
Well, because we know because we have other things I could go into about how the electrons move in certain different substances, they shift around. But with hydrogen, we know that the electron, because it's negatively charged and the nucleus is positively charged, they stay very close to one another. So we know that it's the same electron.
Okay.
And so the point is that this
you don't know that. You think that that might be in the same thing.
Well, I can't produce it deductively logically, but as I say, that's not practical in the real world. We can't deductively deduce anything in the real world.
In other words, empiricism is always changing, so be careful with those dogmatic arguments.
Well, we observe this. This happens in the laboratory. No
yeah,
scientist.
You saw it happen. Like the ore in the water was crooked.
Sorry, but we have seen evidence. This is what this is all about. This is you seeing those electrons jiggling around. So when we can look at that and say, look, that electron's there. That electron shell is there. It's not moving. So we can actually see that these stay in place. So this idea you've suddenly got in your head that these electrons are disappearing off, we can see that electron's sitting in one particular place. Anyway, I know you're trying to get on, so I'm rushing this a little bit. But the point is, the Schrodinger equation that I showed you at the start has a probabilistic element to it. which is exactly in agreement with the behavior that we see in the real world. That we see these electrons jumping down, emitting a particular energy, and we know the probability that statistically what a bunch of electrons will do, and they match the theory. We have something we can measure in the laboratory, and we have a theory for it, and they come together beautifully, and we have no other causation that we can detect. So we have the theory saying what the probability of something happening, and it behaves exactly the same. The evidence is overwhelming.
No, it's not. You got it exactly backward, as I said earlier. You're trying to use
I'm trying to do things quickly. So
that's
another
one. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm trying to keep. I don't know if you'll give me an extra 5 minutes or something.
That's fine.
Right, and then there is a radioactivity. So this is now radioactivity. Remember, is something that happens inside the nucleus, which is the thing at the. So you have the protons and neutrons inside a tiny little thing in the center of an atom. So, for instance, if the nucleus was the size of a pea, then the electron cloud that you were just looking at, when we were at that boy thing here, what's that damn thing gone? Those stop, you little bastard. Brilliant. These are, so you're seeing the electron shells there, and that's it. I've set it off now. Like, stupid thing stops it. Brilliant. Stop. And the nucleus is one tiny, I say relative to the size of a football field, a football stadium. Right. So let's get back to this. No, back to that. So here we have the nucleus, the thing that lives in the fucking bloody thing. Oh, you can't hear all this. I'm getting all the noise. You're not. Good. So here we have the nucleus, and it will, when you have radioactivity, a nucleus changes its state, and it emits part of itself, which is called radiation. And here, for instance, we have a uranium nucleus, and it will do that and emit a great lump of itself. Now that is not, there is no way, that is not caused. The uranium atom does that all by itself. And again, the Schrodinger equation dictates what the probability is. Because, for instance, if you looked at a bunch of uranium atoms, and this is describing here the energy that's emitted in this process. There is nothing you can do to a uranium atom to make it decay, or decay less or more quickly. You can't heat it up. You can't give it a good bashing. If the uranium atom is preserved, it will decay according to what everybody knows as the half-life of it. And that is an uncaused event. The radioactive nucleus decides to do it. So if you were to look, and it's probabilistic, so if you were to look at an individual uranium atom, you could not predict when it was going to go pop. It could not go there for 10,000 years, or it could go in a second. There's a probability. You cannot know. There's no causation.
So the fact that you cannot tell when it's going to happen somehow makes it an uncaused effect?
Because we know that, because it's random. If something is random, you see, hold on, again, this is an important point. If we have the input to a system and the output is random, there is no link. There is no, if the link is random, you know that there's no causation. If you have if something is happening randomly, and even if you change all the variables that could possibly affect it, and the variables you change do not change the random pattern of behavior, you know there's no causal link.
Rumpus, if you want to say we don't understand it, that's fine, but don't tell me effects.
No, we do. Because we do statistically, because that
Schrodinger.
No, we do. We know exactly, because that Schrodinger equation that I showed at the start has that probabilistic stuff built in. It says that we can use that equation to say that of a population, say of 10,000 uranium atoms, the equation will say there is a random chance or probability of particular probability that half of those atoms will decay. But you can't say that any particular atom will decay radioactively. And that is determined by the equation, and it's probabilistic. That equation is probabilistic. There is no cause. It is doing it randomly. And then, of course, take this to the next stage. And if you have enough of them together, here we have an atom here you can actually, the energy released in that can cause other ones to, if man brings enough of these together, then eventually, of course, you can model that with these mousetraps, because the energy inside the uranium atom, there's pent-up energy inside it, and once that's been released by one of them randomly going, then you can get an effect like this. So here's our pent-up nucleus that has energy inside it, and randomly, of its own volition, nothing caused that, it does this to any other surrounding atoms that are in that same pent-up energy state. And I think this is another example. I didn't. I think we've got the. I think we've basically understood that, haven't we? I don't think. I can't remember if there's anything useful to be unlearned from this period. The point has been made. Right, and ultimately, of course, this is an uncaused event.
Yeah, that Einstein was an accident.
That was not caused by anything. Man brought lots of those atoms together, but what caused that to go off was the spontaneous and uncaused decay of a uranium or plutonium atom by itself. It decided to do it. We couldn't make it do it, but we know statistically from that Schrodinger equation that it will do it.
So who made that bomb?
As I said, we can bring lots of those atoms together to show off the cumulative. That's why I showed you all those mousetraps. We can bring those mousetraps together so that you can see a dramatic event. But the cause, the thing that made it start to go bang, was an uncaused event. Probabilistic, determined by that Schrodinger wave equation, for which we completely understand, and that is what an uncaused event does for you. We'll stop this here. That's not needed. So that is the dramatic, small quantum effects manifest themselves in a macroscopic world. And similarly, I believe the universe to have been an uncaused event. There is no cause for the radioactive decay. There is nothing you can do to a uranium atom to make it decay when it doesn't want to. And we've got an equation to define the chances of it going, and everything agrees with itself. And all of the when that first thing there, when I was actually meant to show you down here, all your computers and things. For instance, here we have what is called a potential. This is quantum tunneling, and this is happening inside the transistors, inside all of the tech you've got. There is a probability. Here we have an obstacle, a potential, an energy obstacle, which is greater than the energy of the electron or whatever that's going on in your system, and it can actually tunnel through randomness, through a probability that we know of, defined by that Schrodinger wave equation, that it will jump through. And that's how all your computers and transistors work, and things like your aluminium is only conductive because it's covered in a layer of aluminium oxide, which is actually a very good insulator. But the electrons can leap through this because of random probabilistic events. So I'm expecting you to turn into a gibbering wreck now, Trey, because I've demonstrated to you an uncaused event for which the science and the theory comes together into one, for which we have an absolute cast iron case, and we have uncaused events that happen in the real world, in the real lab, in all sorts of environments that we can show, and they happen now. This is not, you don't need the theory. We're happening them in a practical sense in the lab, in the real world. So for you to deny their existence is ridiculous. And okay. I'm now going to administer a drill to you.
Okay, let me tell you what's the problem with your whole paradigm here. What you're doing is you're saying that I can observe something that I don't understand and then impose that on the rational coherence that defines our understanding of that. And you've got it exactly backwards. Okay, you cannot deny the law of non-contradiction.
I haven't. Well, no way I'm doing. Where did I do that? Where did I do that? Where did I do that?
That's basically what you're saying. You're saying basically.
No. You show me. Show me.
An uncaused effect is a violation of the law of non-contradiction.
No, it's not. I've showed you.
Now, Listen, my friend. If you want to say we don't understand subatomic.
No, we do understand it. We do understand it. The equation.
No, we don't understand it.
We do. That equation defines exactly how it behaves. We understand it perfectly. Perfectly.
Are you familiar with Are you familiar with the argument between Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein on this?
Yes, and Einstein was wrong. He believed in determinism. Bohr believed in that probabilistic equation that I showed you.
You know what his coat of arms said?
And he's been shown right. He's been shown right again and again. Every single experiment that's ever been done has confirmed that equation, and Einstein was reluctant to accept it, and he was wrong.
Okay, what was Niels Bohr, his coat of arms? Do you know what it said?
Irrelevant.
Coat of arms?
Doesn't matter.
Contraria sunt complementaria. He said contradictions are complementary. Do you know what that does for the law of non-contradiction? By definition.
I don't care.
I know you don't care because you just lost.
No, I haven't. The fact that he's got something on his arms is irrelevant. All of that body of scientific
Niels Bohr threw his brains out on that issue.
Your computer is living proof as to the correctness of that equation.
It means that you're ignorant about it, but that doesn't mean that rationality is out the window.
You are ignorant of that equation and how it determines exactly how we understand how the world works. You are ignorant of that equation. That's the problem. The ignorance is on your side exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I need to get going, my friend.
Okay.
I've got to study for class, and I've got a whole list of stuff I need to get done. But anyway, thank you for giving me this lesson. And I think you sufficiently reduced me to tears and annihilated me. Well done.
You've actually been much better behaved in this hangout than I expected you to be, and you've been much nicer to me than you were to Dinah Cats Love Me and Fox and the No. And
well, let me say this: I am really snarky in text, and I have a very dry sense of humor. So I hope I don't mean to be offended, but I love the dry humor. I love to jab at people, and you know, I don't mean to be unkind or anything like that, but that's just the way I am. And also, if somebody says something that's silly to me, I just say that's silly. Makes no sense to me whatsoever, and I'll just say it. You know, I don't care who they are. Yeah,
but you should say why it's silly to you.
I do. That's my whole point. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, quite often yes, well, that's different from saying why it doesn't make sense to you. But one other thing I'd like to say is that Fox and No will be hosting a hangout after the post-show hangout, in which he can tell me where, if I may have failed to perform up to standard or something.
Well, I would say you're probably quite a bit farther than Fox and No. I like Fox and No.
No. On the philosophy side, he's much better than I am.
Okay. Well, yeah, on philosophy, he knows more about philosophy, but he doesn't know how to make unity out of diversity. He mocks the whole idea. It's sad that somebody could get an entire, undergraduate degree and not even understand the very purpose of his degree.
So what does he mock?
The idea of unity and diversity. That the whole goal of philosophical inquiry is to unify the diversity, to make sense out of things. It's coherence out of chaos. And he thinks that's silly. But I'm saying, okay, whatever. Go listen to R.C. Sproul, and you get a lot more than you got out of those 4 years of your college there. But anyway. Anyway, I need to get going. Thank you for this, and I appreciate the interaction. Actually, it was educational and helpful to me, and the way you explained that stuff was very helpful and very well done. So thank you. I think the people that are watching this got an education as well, and hopefully people in the future will gain from this. Okay.
Well, Annie, you've been well behaved actually, Trey. So thank you for that. And yes, okay. And so I hope to speak to Fox and the No shortly.
Okay, well, it's nice to meet you, and hopefully we'll interact in the future, okay?
Okay.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.